Good.
Welcome to Orlando. Coming to you live from the show floor at Xponential. My name is Richard Fisher. I'm the publisher of Inside Unmanned Systems, InsideGNSS, and Inside Autonomous Vehicles. We are autonomous media, and we are hosting Get Into the Future podcast. Live streaming. Yes, you heard it here. We are live streaming. This is live in real time, and I am delighted today to have with me Alberto Lacaze, Chief Executive Officer of Robotics Research. Welcome, Alberto.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's nice meeting with you, Alberto. We've been familiar with your work for some years now. Some of our partners, some of our sensor partners are actually partners of yours. We've done more than a couple of articles on robotics research and your capabilities. And then a few weeks ago, there was some announcements where there was some significant capital investment in robotics research. And then today, as I was in a meeting earlier, I got an update with some really big news. Can you tell our audience about it, please?
Sure. So Oshkosh, our partner on the military side, decided to invest in robotic research, specifically to work on their commercial vehicles. So Oshkosh makes refuse trucks, they make fire trucks, they make construction trucks as well. And they're very interested in partnering with us for our autonomy, same as we do on the military side.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's an interesting development and certainly a good partner. Given their experience on both commercial and defense sectors, but their significant kind of visibility in commercial user communities, tell us a little bit more about what your aspirations are, Alberto, as it relates to commercial use cases, like first responders, or like emergency vehicles, or like some of the other kind of service types of vehicles that Oshkosh is so well known for.
Yeah, so Oshkosh has in operations, I think, close to 100,000 vehicles right now. And they they're going day to day. Is the boring kind of tasks, is the day after day going to the neighborhood, picking up the refuse, or is the emergency situations. Both of them can benefit from having some level of automation, as well as having some level of safety as they're going around, right? So safety and automation has promised to lower their insurance costs and simplify the process and streamline the whole system around this, houses and neighborhoods, right? Yeah. It's a different kind of autonomy in the sense that these vehicles are stopping almost on every house, on every other house. And that is a different application than what you would see pretty much on anything else. It's very much appealing to what we do.
Low dynamic makes it challenging, and you also have urban canyons. You have challenging GNSS environments from a positioning and accuracy standpoint. You've got challenges there. So, can you give our listeners just kind of a brief overview, a summary of the fundamental robotics research kit that you can
Sure.
that you would expect to see on some of those vehicles?
Sure, yeah, and we have in many other commercial vehicles as well right now, trucks and yard hustlers and buses and so forth. The Autonomy Kit, so we're a full stack provider, and that means that we provide a complete hardware stack and a complete software stack. And if you look at the hardware itself, it includes several different components. It includes sensors, like cameras, lidars, radars, and so forth. It includes computing capabilities that allow you to take all that information and process it into something that makes sense and understands the world. And then you have a lot of sensors that are very specific to localization, right? And that normally is inertial solutions, right? Together with GPS receivers, if it's available or not. Many of the applications that we have, actually, we don't require to use GPS at all. And we do that for many reasons, is because under many of the operations that we have, it's hard to see all satellites at the same time and so forth. We have also developed an extension of a GPS receiver that we call Sequential Acquisition GPS, SGPS.
Yeah, you were before we went live. Alberto was talking about some interesting innovation when we were talking about being able to see viewable satellites in the sky, particularly in the operational environments that these vehicles will find themselves. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Yeah. So imagine that you're in an urban canyon, right, surrounded by tall buildings around on each side. Very unlikely you're going to be seeing the satellites directly.
Yeah.
It's unlikely you're going to see all the satellites, and it's very unlikely you'll be see them directly, right? So the new system that we have put together allows us to get a fix without having to seeing the traditional 4 satellites that you need to do. It allows us to actually get a fix by seeing one satellite at a time, and that gives you a huge advantage because a vehicle might see a couple of satellites, they're in
How
this
are you
area.
then synchronizing the timing?
All of that is synchronized with a local atomic clock,
A CSAC.
a CSAC. Yeah.
Chip scale atomic clock, for those of you who we want to define our acronyms to make sure everybody's comfortable with the subject matter. So given that innovation, Alberto, what does that enable?
This enables you, for example, to suppress the number of satellites that you're seeing in every location. So let's say, for example, that you're in Main Street and you know the time, you know the position of the satellites, you know how the obfuscation of the satellites work. So you could pick and choose which satellites you want to be listening to specifically pick on the ones that are not multi-return. And that allows you to have a much more accurate solution on top of being able to get solutions where a normal receiver cannot. And that's a big difference, obviously, right? So the system still benefits from a single satellite reception, if you will.
So not just, it works in multipath environments, it works in any kind of GNSS challenged environment. That's where that will really deliver some meaningful benefit.
That's one of the places where it shines. We can also mix and match satellites from different constellations. And that's something that normally traditional receivers cannot do. Most receivers can receive multiple constellations, but they still need 4 of a kind to be able to get a lock.
Right.
This allows us to basically mix and match that further increases your accuracy and your capability of getting a lock in places that are normally challenging.
So we are live from Xponential in Orlando, Florida, with Alberto Lacaze? Lacaze, sorry. Alberto Lacaze, from Chief Executive Officer, Robotics Research. So as we look around the room here, the landscape, Alberto, tell me about how you think we as an industry or a community or an ecosystem of technology and service providers are doing. Where do you see the kind of, next layer of immediate opportunity for companies like Robotics Research?
It has 2 branches. It has one branch that works on the military side. In that case, we're automating logistic vehicles, transportation vehicles, and vehicles that go into dangerous areas. Right. On the commercial side, we're automating buses, trucks, yard hustlers, and even some other agricultural vehicles and smaller vehicles. Few companies deal with both sides of the equation. So we see it as a benefit. As a matter of fact, I'm doing a presentation in a few minutes to talk specifically about why we think that serving the military and serving the DoD is such an advantage, but also has its downfalls, right? And figuring out how to deal with those is one of the challenges of all the companies that are in here, right? Most of the UAV companies that are here are also straddling between the commercial and the military side.
We've covered, Albert, it's funny you mentioned that. We've covered it a lot. 4 or 5 years ago, we did our first cover feature on Defense Goes Commercial. We know it, we see it, we report on it. We've done 3 separate cover features on exactly that, this kind of commercial defense nexus, which is can be problematic, but it's also really important for us as kind of a curator and of our role in media in this space is really to kind of not pick winners and losers, but it is to define, and kind of celebrate those companies that are doing it right, those platforms that are doing it right, the sensors that are doing it right, the people that are doing it right. And what we found is there is plenty of, cross-pollination between and amongst, in-theater ops and, commercial ops. And if it's good enough for an in-theater application, it's probably okay for most neighborhoods in New York City. That's a joke because, but seriously, it's the platforms or the sensors and this kind of nexus of capabilities is really kind of necessary to help accelerate the rate of penetration and the rate of development. Not the least of which is, the technical readiness level. You have a TRL, proven TRL that's been deployed in theater. You're pretty well ready to go if you can simply develop, and frankly, this is sometimes, almost always the challenge, isn't it, is developing the business model that you can make the technical case, okay, it works. The business case, okay, here's the value proposition. It makes sense. It's going to save time, money, lives, right? And then, you need to make that case to the user community such that they say, Alberto, you're exactly right. We're going to buy that today. We're going to adopt today. And so tell our listeners a bit about how you view that near-term opportunity in terms of commercial viability in 2022.
Yeah, so the commercial viability has always been there. The question is always cost, right? So military may have, under certain conditions, a little bit more freedom to choose things that are a little bit more expensive or a little bit earlier in the production cycle.
Sure.
But it's hard to do that on the commercial side, right? However, the commercial side gives you scale in a way that is impossible to reach on the military side. Right?
Yeah.
You can think every market that you think about, from UAVs to ground vehicles to trucks to whatever. Normally, you think about the commercial side as about being 100 to 1 if you're considering just a DoD alone. So if you think about the cost of the sensors, right? LiDARs, cameras. DoD alone would never have been able to lower the prices to a level that they're now, right? So they're benefiting significantly from the commercial side. Commercial side is also benefiting from the military side in the sense that the military side has a never-ending amount of edge cases, right? Because you're normally dealing with an adversary. That adversary specifically looking for, your flaws, right? Therefore, you talk about weather, talk about terrain, talk about the vehicles themselves that you're encountering. All of those generate an environment that is plagued with edge cases.
Sure.
Right. The commercial side, everybody's trying to do exactly the opposite. It's trying to find out an operating environment that minimizes all the edge cases and so forth. Unfortunately, it's not that easy to do. Right. Once in a while, it snows in a good road, right? That you might want to operate, or there's a sandstorm, or there's tumbleweeds, or there's something that it's hard to see. All the time. The military normally encounters all those things very often.
Sure. I think also, though, the real benefit from my perspective in the market for robotics research is that you're not, one of the big challenges that we understand when we're seeing a platform or a suite of capabilities migrate from a defense application into a commercial or civil application is cost, which this famous C in the swap C, right? I know most people like swap better before you added the C acronym, but the reality is this: doing those putting a sensor package together where you can have level 4 kind of autonomy. It's difficult to do it at automotive scale and cost. Those requirements, they want orders of magnitude of cost driven out of that engineering. So I think it's really interesting. We don't see the same kind of downward price pressure and constraints, I think, on more utilitarian autonomy in trucks, in fleets, transportations, services markets. They don't care if they spend X. Now, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the price sensitivity on a LiDAR sensor, for example, isn't the same that it would be on a car that's going to be sold 8 zillion units, because they want everything for $20, or excuse me, $2, or is that 20 cents? I mean, at what point do you reach a diminishing return? So I think that market position for you guys is a really kind of exciting one.
Yeah, and we specifically seek out those areas that give you that cost balance that matches the state of the art of the sensors, the cost of the sensors, the cost of the computing capabilities, and so forth. And that might not be today in some markets, right? And we're perfectly fine with that, right? So,
but it's commercially viable today for the kind of applications that we've been talking about. It's been a pleasure. Alberto Lacaze, Chief Executive Officer, Robotics Research. It's been a real pleasure. We wish you continued success, and thank you for making the world a safer place for autonomy.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you very much.